So last night was my first time ever providing or giving an intro to permaculture class. And I felt for the most part I did an okay job. There were a few points that I felt I didn't flesh out as well as I could have, and a few questions or comments that I don't think I answered as well as I could have either. So one thing that I did not say at all is within permaculture, the problem is the solution, which a lot of people think, well, I know the problem's the problem. By that, when you look at a problem, it's telling you something. So if you've got weeds in your lawn, if you've got dandelions in your lawn, a dandelion is a taproot. And taproots crave compacted soil. Lawns are notorious for having compacted soil, so that's why dandelions seem to thrive in lawns. Also in sidewalk cracks and right alongside the sidewalk, that's where dandelions love to be because they love compaction. So if you see the dandelion, that's a problem in your lawn. What's the solution? Aerating your soil so that the compaction is not as intense, and that will alleviate some of the problem with the dandelions. So yeah, didn't mention that at all, and I felt like that was a bit of a failing on my part because permaculture is a solutions-based ethical design science. When I said that, people were like, solution. It's a lot to absorb. That one sentence is compact. Okay, the next thing, as I was talking a little bit about zone design within a permaculture system, zone design is basically you've got your house. Right around your house is zone 1. And then zone 2 is a little bit further out, zone 3, zone 4, zone 5. And I drew it as just a target, and each circle being further out, which it's easy for explaining, but it doesn't really show what can be done or how your system can be set up. And while I was showing this, a lady mentioned, well, I go to every part of my property all the time. Okay, zone 1 you go to every day, zone 2 you go to every week, zone 3 every month, zone 4 every year, or maybe quarterly if you're really intense, and zone 5 is the wilderness. But this lady said, all of my property I go to every day, so is that just zone 1? And I didn't explain very well the possibility of very small space permaculture. If you live in an apartment and you only have a balcony and that's the extent of your property, you can still do permaculture there. You can still do zone design there, but it would be zone 0 is your apartment and zone 1 is your balcony, and that's it. And that's perfectly fine. If you've got larger amounts of property and you can provide a little bit of zone 5 for the wilderness, for maybe nature walks or something, that's preferable, but only if you have sufficient amount of property to do so. Anyway, so this lady says she's got just the property, or she goes on every part of her property all the time, every day. That's wonderful. I'm happy that she is able to interact with every part of her property every day. How effectively is she utilizing that property? I did not ask her how big her property was. That would be something to find out, because with permaculture, you can the smaller your property is, the more efficiently you can work with that property and integrate small elements to that property to make that system more abundant than any large-scale agricultural operation could be per square foot. There's absolutely no way that a large-scale agricultural development, agricultural field could be as abundant as really intensely managed small scale. There's a guy down in Australia that has, I think it's 1/8 of an acre lot, and it's pretty close to a ton of food a year that he creates that he is able to grow on that small scale because he's really intense with his management. He's got 3 different apple trees within a 6-foot space, and the only way to keep them able to be in that space to prevent them from growing into each other and making a mess is he really intensively prunes those trees. He prunes them 3 times a year. So he interacts with those trees 4 times a year. Not really a lot of time is spent, and it's a little bit therapeutic going through, snip, 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 and then you're done with that tree. But doing that provides him with an apple yield from each of those trees each year. And I think he went with an early season, mid-season, a late season apple. That way it extends the amount of food he gets, or the amount of apples that he gets, to a lot longer than just one tree would provide him with. If he just had an early season tree, then he would just get a large amount of early season apples, and then he'd be done for the year for that. Underneath that tree, he's growing chives. Or sorry, underneath those trees, I think he's growing chives. And so he's stacking the function of every square inch on his property. He's pulling the rainwater off of his roof to provide water for the property. I think he has 1 large tree, and he's not able to harvest all of the fruit off of that tree really high because you can't really get a big ladder into his small lot. So that's food for the birds. But he's got all sorts of different food there. And because he's so efficiently and effectively managing that, he has an abundance. So much so that he either has to process a large amount of that food, or he's able to share that abundance with his neighbors. And so often in this world, we have a scarcity mindset where there's never enough of this for everybody. So I have to hoard what I have. But within permaculture, if you flip that and develop an abundance mindset, and you're able to take each of those elements in your system and marry those to other elements so they work together instead of fighting each other, then you're able to develop additional energy, basically. You're able to have your chickens turning your compost pile. And if you don't want a compost pile, and if you don't want chickens, that's fine. There's a guy in Austria by the name of Sepp Holzer, an old German man. He was once asked, if you don't want pigs in your system, what do you do? And he responded, then you need to do the job of the pigs. And what's the job of the pigs? They go through the forest and they root around and they eat and they fertilize and they provide meat. So the pigs are aerating the soil in the forest floor. And that's very important, because if the soil isn't aerated, then it becomes compacted, becomes not aerated, anaerobic. There you go. It becomes anaerobic, and the soil food web doesn't thrive as much if the soil isn't aerated a little bit. On the flip side of that, if you're tilling your soil a lot, every time you do so, you're killing a lot of the microbes in the soil that are trying to interact with the plants that you're trying to grow. If you kill all the microbes in the soil, then the plants are living off of the corpses of those microbes for a season. But then you have less microbes the next season and the next season and the next season, and then your yields start going down. And then you are needing to take the place of those microbes by putting chemical fertilizers on your property. And so when you give those plants the chemical fertilizers, you're basically force feeding the plants. And what nutrients are you providing for the plants when you do that? You're providing nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. But what if the plant needs a little bit of boron or selenium or one of the other 40 nutrients that we need to survive? With the way plants interact with the microbes within the soil, the plant releases exudates into the soil, and the soil takes those exudates, the microbes in the soil takes those exudates, consumes them, and provides the plant the nutrients that the plant wants. It's a really neat interaction that they have there. But if you don't have the right microbes in the soil, or if the microbe levels are so low in the soil that they're not able to provide enough nutrients to the plant, that's when the plant doesn't thrive as well. So yeah, I've mentioned elements a little bit in this, and an element, everything in this world is an element of the system of the world. I'm an element, you're an element, the chickens are an element of the system, soil microbes are an element of the system, the plant is an element of the system, and so on and so forth. Every element has certain needs, and I did mention the basic human needs for survival, which are food, water, health and sanitation, security, energy, and shelter. If any one of those isn't being provided for us, or we're not providing those, then we will die. If you don't have food, you'll die. If you don't have water, you'll die. That makes a lot of sense. If you don't have shelter, you might be okay during the summer, but when it gets cold outside, you'll die. If you don't have energy, you won't have lights in the summer. You might not have water because you need to pump the water up from the well, or won't be able to microwave your food, et cetera, et cetera. If you don't have energy during the winter, you die. Health and sanitation. If you're not being sanitary, you're not going to be healthy for very long. And if you don't have some type of health promoting service, healthcare, vitamins, etc., if you get a cut and you're not able to heal from that cut, you die. The one thing that you might not ever need is security, but the moment you need it, if you don't have it, you're going to be in a severe state. Anyway, so those are the basic needs of me and every other person for survival. But those 6 basic needs, to a certain extent, are the same with the animals or with the plants. Not so much with the house, because that is the shelter. But any living thing would need these things. So Can a chicken protect itself? No, we need to provide the security for the chicken. Can the food get water? If there's a water source nearby, yes, but if not, we need to provide that. Food during the summer, if it's free range, potentially it'll get enough, but in the winter, definitely not. Health and sanitation, if you're not cleaning the chicken coop, the chicken can get all sorts of different illnesses, and that would cause its life to diminish. Again, during the winter, if it's too cold for the chicken, and shelter and security specifically for chickens, they kind of go hand in hand in that regard. But anyway, every element has certain needs and can provide certain things. So again, with the example of the chicken, it provides eggs, it provides meat, it can scratch up and provide some pest control, provides feathers, and eventually its carcass when all the meat is stripped off. So those things that it provides, what are you going to do with each of those things? If you are never going to eat the eggs and you're not going to give them away or sell them, are you just going to chuck them in the garbage? Hopefully you would find some useful thing for those eggs. What about when the chicken no longer is providing eggs for you? Are you going to eat the chicken at that point in time? Will you consume that meat? What will you do with the bones? What will you do with the feet and the beak and everything else? What will you do with the feathers? A lot of people, when they are focused on trying to utilize as much of what they have as possible, when they're done with the chicken and they may stew it up and eat it, at that point you've got the bones and you've got the feathers there. You could put those in a compost pile, and it'll take a while for those to break down, but they definitely can. And once they've broken down, that adds additional nutrients to your compost that you can then spread out into the garden to make all of your food that much more healthy for you in the future. And again, everything is an element. Your dog, your cat, your parakeet, whatever bird you might have, those are all elements. What do they need? What can they provide? Or what will they provide, whether you like it or not? And how are you going to utilize what they have provided for you or to you? And looking at us each as elements of this greater system, what can each of us do? Because we are slightly higher level objects than a chicken or a cat or a dog, we all have our own special talents. I'm okay with technology. I do have a degree in information technology from Brigham Young University. That means something to some people. I did take a permaculture design certification course, so I've gone through that and gained that bit of knowledge. I have 2 working arms and working legs. I can almost count to 20 with my fingers and toes, since I'm missing a couple toes. Some people find me funny every once in a while. I don't know why. I can read and write. You see, there's so many different things that each of us can do, so many talents that we have, so many opportunities that we each have had that are different from everyone else. What are we doing? How are we, as different elements of the Malad system, how are we connecting with the other elements? If we are not connecting with those elements, then those benefits to the system are not being properly utilized. And that's the beautiful thing about permaculture, is trying to recognize the talents of each element. I'll just call them talents because that's easier. The talents of each element, and trying to connect those talents with other elements to provide more abundance. And I did mention the ethics of permaculture, but I didn't go into it extremely thoroughly. The ethics of permaculture are earth care, people care, and return of surplus to the first two ethics. Now, this is the Permaculture a Designer's Manual by Bill Mollison. It's a hefty book, a hefty read, but it's got so much information in it. And I just want to pull out the ethics just a little bit. The third ethic, the return of surplus, in here he actually talked about setting limits to population and consumption. So change the third ethic a little bit. By governing your own needs, we can set aside further the above principles. This ethic is a very simple statement of guidance and serves well to eliminate everyday endeavors. It can be coupled to a determination to make our own way, to be neither employers nor employees, landlords nor tenants, but to be self-reliant as individuals and to cooperate as groups. So, setting population control initially sounds like you're trying to kill people, or maybe the one-child policy of China. Basically, if you have an overabundance of cows in one paddock, you're going to get severe compaction on that soil. You're going to get way too much fertilizer or cow manure on that soil. If you've got way too many people in a building, there'll become a lot of strife in the building. The building won't be able to sustain itself. People won't be able to grow enough food for that population within there. So when I think of population control or returning of surplus, that's what I think of. You're trying to make sure that the system stays within balance, that we're not going really crazy and trying to fit 50,000 people into Malad. But at the same time, we're not trying to limit it to 200 people in Malad. Both directions are wrong. We need to find an equilibrium where Malad can actually sustain the amount of people within it. And really, I would say we could probably put 10 times as many people in Malad if we are properly utilizing the elements within the Malad system. If we are properly utilizing all of the land, if we are properly utilizing each other, and properly utilizing the plants and animals within Malad. One thing that I had mentioned last night that I would love to see, but is not happening, is there is no one doing any composting here in Malad for other people. I have not taken that job on myself, but I think that would be an industry that could thrive here in Malad. And even if they're not wanting to sell it directly to everyone else in Malad, they could sell it to Hess Lumber. They could sell it through Hess Lumber, or sell it through ACE, or they could sell it directly. One of those three options, I would say. And by doing so, the people that are wanting to improve their soil life would be able to take that compost that's being provided and make more healthy food for themselves and for those around Malad. On the flip side of that, everyone within Malad has carbon waste. leftover food, cardboard boxes, grass clippings, tree trimmings, so much carbon waste. And where does it go? They either set it on fire. Some people out in the county do that, or they send it to the dump. Some people feed their food scraps to their animals. That's good. At least they're getting some additional use out of it. But grass clippings, tree trimmings, most all that is probably going to the dump to be burned up there. Instead of doing that, it could be turned into really, really high quality compost to increase the microbe content and carbon content within the soil, which would increase the yield nutritionally and by tonnage of everybody's property. And I think if someone were to do that, they could actually make a fairly good living doing so. But that's not something that I would be able to do because I'm doing a bunch of other stuff right now. But if someone wanted to take it on, awesome. I'm all for it. I'll be your first customer. I'm probably missing some other things that I'm sure I'm missing some other things that I could have talked about, but it was my first class, so a little bit nervous, and yeah, I didn't catch everything that I could have there. Anyway, I'll probably be doing more permaculture classes because, one, I think it's a very beneficial thing for the valley to be thinking about and learning about, and it really brings it to the forefront of my mind as well, so that I can use it better on my property and in my everyday life. Anyway, if you like what I have to say, please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll talk to you on the next one. Thanks.